artificial intelligence exploring the integration of artificial intelligence in English for academic purposes classrooms. AI is kind of a hot topic these days, and so I've done a few things with AI in my own classroom, and so this is a lot with within the writing realm. But I have branched off, and we can talk about that. And I've got opportunity for discussion in the beginning of this presentation, and as well as in the end. And so I really invite you to ask questions and to share with each other, because I really think this is a great platform for those of us that are within the education system and with something that's relatively new and not going away. And so I first want to start off by introducing myself. And I'm Robyn Socha. I work at Full Sail University for the last 11 years. I've been in higher education for 22, teaching all levels of ESOL and EAP in all modalities as well. I've presented at the state levels as well as the international levels. I currently serve on the board of SSTSOL, and I am the president, outgoing president of the Central Florida TSOL division. If I look at these two, and I felt like I was going to I started typing this keynote and getting it all prepared a few weeks ago. And my daughter, who's just turned 18, was like, Mom, why don't you just make the whole keynote? Why don't you just have AI create the whole keynote for you? And I was like, no, I'm going to do this old school and actually read peer-reviewed articles and do the research and kind of do this the archaic way. But if you look, summary 1 and summary 2, one of them is an introduction of myself that I made, and summary 2 is the one that AI made, as well as the pictures. This is a selfie taken in my kitchen with my refrigerator in the background, and I quickly was able to make an AI version of the same exact picture to the right. So looking at some of these things and just kind of glancing through, I'm not going to take a lot of time to like read through my bio, but if you can see, there is a big difference in verbiage and how AI constructs, whether it's professional, whether they want to simplify it. And we're going to take a look at that. So first, I want to thank all the Florida teachers that are here this evening and that are going to be watching this recorded. In 1997, the state of Florida, we were among the first to move forward with virtual learning. So we are the leaders in digital literacy. And so I think we should commend ourselves and kind of give ourselves a pat on the back on that. I come from an institution at Full Sail University where technology is the forefront. Digital literacy is an expectation and part of our program. So an ongoing embedded professional development is essential in creating successful school digital literacy culture. And so as I go through this presentation, I kind of want you to ask yourself some questions. Like, do you hold a bias? I've been in higher ed for 24 years. I'm a little archaic and a bit of a dinosaur. And sometimes, even though I think that I transition well, this whole AI thing, I was like, AI, I'm not going to do it. So you need to kind of ask yourself, well, am I holding my own self back about this and what my bias is towards it? And then think about, how do you currently use online as a writing tool? And are there strategies or activities that maximize technology's usefulness as an education tool? And then, are your tools constantly outdated? I feel like mine, I'm always finding new things. And then even now I'm like, oh, I thought I was using something, but 2 years later, it's a bit obsolete. And this has been going like this for a while, but now with AI, it's like a whole nother level. And then lastly, and most importantly, do you have policies for technology usage in the classroom? And I know Helena can speak to this. We just created something for our own department at Full Sail where with the use of AI. So it's something to consider, that AI is not going away, but perhaps by creating boundaries and setting boundaries, it allows you a little more exhale in the usage of it. So speaking of the fear of using AI, Kim mentioned in one of the articles, despite the current pervasive use of AI technologies, the claim by Dreyfus and Dreyfus that machine tutors fail as substitutes for the complex and intuitive feedback of human experts still appeals to educational research and practitioners. And I think that this is something that a long time ago, when I was part of conferences, this was really the bottom line. It was like, well, humans are better. And I don't disagree with this. But I do think that with AI, we need to consider a few things. The first thing is that if you can't beat them, you join them. And so we're using it to inform and to inspire. And that's what a lot of technology is used for ultimately, if it is used in the proper way. The academic responsibility and integrity. And so I think as teachers, that is what we're here to do, right? So it's to adapt, it's to be able to transform, and ultimately it's being able to model the right behavior in the right ways in order to use this technology as a tool. Also, maybe joining traditional practices and joining new practices. I know that I can take things that I know as a seasoned teacher and maybe some of my things that are in my wheelhouse, like creativity, and then add that to inspire and help engage and motivate students so that they know that they're in control. And then also teaching how to responsibly use a variety of technological and informational resources. So, I think back when I used, I think it was Navigator or whatever it was, and it was just blue lines of hyperlinks, and now how Google had kind of transformed and evolved, and we're like, oh no, Google knows everything. And I do recall there was a time where we had Google email and everyone was like Gmail, and everyone was like, no, they're going to get all our information and they'll know everything we're doing. And then slowly over time, that was okay. And so I think when there's something big and new, we sometimes have that knee-jerk reaction of a fear. And so looking at how can we use this responsibly? And then, of course, taking a negative and turning it into a positive. So AI's positive impacts is that it supports engagement. And in a national study based out of Connecticut's pilot program, Sternberg showed in a quantitative and qualitative research study that there was the English language learners were the most beneficial for AI. So this is something to consider, as well as communication tools offer that instant gratification and like a text-like community that some of the younger generations are all about in maximizing the learning potential and their creativity. Ultimately, this is creating more effective users. It's creating students that are informed questioners that maybe they can ask more and more questions. And it's almost like a game. And I find myself even doing it with AI. I created a whole entire, I went on a vacation with my son who turned 21 to Denver, Colorado. I wanted to go hiking. He wanted to go see the breweries. So we made a compromise and we did this. I did it all through AI, and AI created this amazing itinerary. But I kept asking it questions, and the more I asked it, the more refined it got. So this really encourages students, again, to become, not just through motivation, but just become engaged. It also creates reflective producers of things. So maybe there are things that they hadn't thought of, and now, after looking at the long list of questions that they continuously ask AI, it helps with critical thinking. So the reflective producers is a big impact as well. AI's positive impacts in ESL writing, grammar, reading, speaking, you can apply that to them as well. It supports numerous writing tasks, and I want to talk about some of these writing tasks, and then we can branch off. We can even connect it with the reading and with the grammar. And I invite any of you to write in the chat or to stop me, because I really do feel like this is a great opportunity for all of us to engage. So I'm going to go through these one by one, but they support numerous writing tasks, concepts, ideas, maybe vocabulary that they hadn't thought of. It talks with AI, we can help with procedure, the process of writing, strategic cohesiveness, thoroughness, support, and supporting detail. And then lastly, metacognitive, where you have editing, revising, maybe thinking about points that weren't necessarily thought about before, in argumentative writing, for example. So for L2 learners, the writing challenges, these are things that I find in my 20-something years of teaching writing that have been a challenge for my students. And brainstorming ideas is the very first one. It's like, teacher, I have no idea what I'm going to write about. Okay, well, let's think about this. Or we do thesis writing with 3 predictors. And when we have 3 predictors, it's always the magical number 3, but they can only think of 2. It's like, well, teacher, I don't know why dogs are the best pets. I can think of because they're fun and they're loyal, but no other thing. So this is great for brainstorming. Thesis writing and parallelism. I use this. This is another one that students sometimes struggle with, especially even in the intermediate levels, but definitely in the lower intermediate. When you're doing verb phrases or noun clauses or an adjective noun, adjective noun, adjective noun, when they can't see the parallelism, this is one of these opportunities that perhaps AI could help with. Comprehensive arguments, that written is weaker than verbal. And so I think when students are trying to explain themselves, of course, just like us, a lot of we can add extra in verbal communication. In written communication, sometimes it's harder to find that support. As well as the quality of argument. So that expert tone, which we'll talk about in a moment, because expert tone doesn't necessarily mean plagiarizing, or doesn't mean it's stealing from AI, but I think it's showing them different ways of being able to change words and verbiage around so that it becomes a little more elevated. It gives adequate support that they oftentimes have a hard time finding support. They sometimes have a hard time finding adequate vocabulary. And I'm speaking towards EAP and maybe the higher levels, but even for the higher levels, some of their vocabulary isn't always there. And lastly, editing and revising. I teach English composition as well for the native speakers, and they have a hard time with editing and revising. So with the second language learners, at the higher levels, intermediate levels, revising and editing sometimes is really difficult, not just in the editing process, not just in the grammar, but in actually the organization. And of course, the big word at the bottom, their writing challenges is just motivation. It's like, teacher, I don't want to write a 5-paragraph essay. So this is why we're probably all here. This is the real reason, because now it's like, well, if they lack motivation, then they're just going to throw something in AI and slap it on a piece of paper and say, okay, this is my paper. So how do we get them motivated? So this is what I really want to focus on today too, is showing how it is that students can be motivated using AI. So the benefits of AI in brainstorming. There's new ideas students may not have thought about initially, which I mentioned before. They also support on desired content, that it's not off topic. So if we think about Kaplan's rhetoric and how different cultures speak differently, like from their storytelling, this may help with them trying to bring them in and narrow their focus. It shows the student a process when developing ideas. And students pay more attention to key ideas from AI. This is almost like when you get advice from your mom versus they get advice from their friends. So when I give an idea or a suggestion, it may not be taken the same way as when they're actually talking to AI and then they get an idea or suggestion from AI. It scaffolds, which adds lexical density while centering on key ideas, which is a decrease in off-topic or lexical diversity, where it goes kind of off to what we would consider to be off-topic. And I really have found that my students' quality of writing has gone up. And this may be not just the organizational process, but once again, the grammar. And let's just talk about the other part of that too. We speak on a lot of things, so the speaking component is there, and they're doing more reading. So the reading component is there as well. Strategic organization with cohesiveness, the AI benefit, the thesis writing and parallelism. I have taken thesis writing with students. We've taken ideas and I will have AI generate or regenerate multiple times. They then will take different predictors or different parallelisms, if you will, and then they will combine them into their own thesis writing. This, for me, has been a game changer. It's easier to understand their papers, and it's way easier to grade. I did have a concern initially when I had students do thesis writing with AI, because I was like, you know what, they're not even going to think about it. They're going to say, write me a thesis on dogs. Let's just keep with that topic. And now, they're not thinking about it and now they're just slapping it on. But what I have them do is regenerate 2 or 3 times and then have them basically paraphrase or come up with their own from the 2 or 3 ideas that AI generated. We then have a discussion as a class why it is that they chose those particular 3 predictors or those ideas, why they liked them, and then how it was simplified into their own in their own words. So for me, AI has been a huge benefit in thesis writing. And then once the student has such a clear, good thesis statement, their paper falls in line and their organization falls in line. So and then they're also able to see why some theses work and some do not, and why some look good and some do not. And AI sometimes can be very wordy. And so for them to simplify that there's validity in the language for that as well. The AI for vocabulary. Vocabulary you can use it for synonyms, you can use it to build upon, as well as connecting ideas. Students are able to connect suggestions. They can paraphrase new ideas and encourage work in a logical flow and enriching text. For procedural, the writing process, the actual writing process of AI, and this is kind of the dirty of it all and where we get a little nervous and apprehensive, or at least I did. I was like, okay, I can do thesis writing with my students with AI, but how about actually writing the paper? And what's the point of taking a writing class if they're going to have AI write the paper and then I'm just going to have AI grade the paper? Just AI is just doing everything. So who's doing what? That was sort of how initially I felt about AI. So I was very hesitant and I had my own bias about it. And so the AI benefit in the writing process, though, I find that the outlines and the organization, you can still model and they can still be in control and still use it as a tool because they're still in control of what are the major and minor points, where's the support, what's the supporting detail. I also want to include, and I talk about this a little later too, but supporting detail are examples. AI doesn't know their personal life. So if they're doing some sort of essay that's great. AI helped them with the outline, but now they still need to include some of that supporting detail to show that personal touch. Uh, so AI helps to plan, it helps to draft, and it can also help to revise. So it shows better ways to write cohesive and well-supported paragraphs. And so again, for my reading teachers, this is like hiding peas in plates of food, like for baby children. So I think that it's a great way for them to do a lot more reading at a much more fluency and a lot more elevation. There's ways to rework AI into their own words while building vocabulary. So now they're putting it into their own words, they're paraphrasing, or maybe they're taking things out, putting things in. I think it's a much more engaged way for revisions that can be more thorough and more complex. I have a couple things here for metacognitive. The first slide is for editing and the benefits of AI for editing. And I really think that as teachers, it's like, how many times can I say you have a terrible thesis statement or you don't have enough support, or where's your introduction, or you don't have a conclusion. These are things that for editing that really instructors lack time to provide some of this detailed feedback. We may do a generalized holistic feedback a lot of times because that's time permitting, right? I've got however many students you may have, and now it's like, okay, well, you need to work on your thesis, your support is okay, you have bad topic sentences, you need transitions. But now you can actually go back and do detailed feedback for them, that their feedback on cohesive arguments or specific language. And so AI can respond and interpret in a way that students write and respond how a human tutor might. And that language, and it's so authentic, and that feedback, and it's within seconds. So keep in mind, these are a lot of us have students that are 19, 20, 21 years old. They are very used to instant gratification and instant feedback. And so AI provides that feedback where, as teachers or instructors, it may take us a week to give back a paper. This is almost immediate. So they're able to learn independently without teacher tutoring. In addition to editing, part of the metacognitive is the reflection, the goals, and the strategies. And these are all things that you can incorporate into your course curriculum where it adds value to the class, where it's not just them saying, hey, fix my paper to AI, but now it's having them look and comparing, this is what I originally wrote, and then this is what could be potentially better. So, or is it better? AI isn't always better. So looking at students, how they're using it as a tool to build upon ideas, vocabulary, and more comprehensive support. There's more selective in word choice and encourages more writing and more written correspondence. So again, the more they're writing, the better. If they're talking to AI, that's great. If they're reading more stuff to try to determine which thing is better, perfect. I always say, like, whatever you're reading, if it's, at this point, if it's Facebook, that's great, or Instagram, as long as it's not pictures. So, looking at how encouraging more writing and more written correspondence. They can also do reflections on things they may have missed for support, or how they could make that better. So maybe they use AI to regenerate one of their supporting paragraphs, and then they add to that. Like, you know what? I really like that idea. That support sounds great. Why don't you expand on that? So AI came up with a great idea that you didn't think of initially, but now why don't you add to that? Add some supporting detail. So this is a way for them to continue to write and expand. Also, critical thinking of their learning process, the language and arguments, the support. You can ask them to do a reflection. Why did you choose that thesis statement? Why is it that you feel like your editing process was better using AI? So you can use some of this as a prompt or as a springboard to be able to use reflections, which then again helps with critical thinking. So teachers may not be smarter than AI, but teachers may be smarter than students when they use AI. So looking at, and this is where I'm going to turn it a little bit to some things that teachers, where that AI can be used to help us out. And so I first want to talk a little bit about there's something called semantic coherence theory. And it's a language theory that understands the relationship and connection and coherence. Really, this is a really fancy word. This was a big study done in quantitative and qualitative research. And I'll be honest, when I started looking at the quantitative research, as a typical English teacher, I totally avoid sometimes a lot of that stuff. It's all mathematical equations. It was talking about how many times pronouns are used in AI, how many times nouns are used, what are the graphs. But really, the gist of all of this was that there's a relationship and connection between words and language rules that AI understands, but it hasn't mastered to the point of humans. And that we have related phrases and things that sound human. That's that part where you're like, yeah, no, I know that sounds like a robot. I know that's AI, and I know it's not their real voice or their real words. That part of it it's not just our experience. It's like my mom voice comes in, like my mom intuition, like, yeah, no, I don't think he wrote that. Just like if before AI, when a student would turn in a paper that was perfectly written, it was like, oh no, they have an American speaking roommate, and the roommate wrote that paper. You can tell when different people even speak. It's the way we form and the relationship and connection between our words. There is a semantic concept is linear and sequential, as well as complex and hierarchy. So remember, it's the semantic coherence that is the difference between the robotic language and the human language. And so human language and writing cognition is too complex to rely on a machine alone. So we're working together. And so human intelligence and machine intelligence together can solve problems, and we can create things. So we're using this like a tool. And let's just talk about the fun spot, the sweet spot for teachers. AI is a teacher's helper. It's something like a teacher's aide that we have with us all the time now. So you can quickly find grammatical errors. Not can you just find them. And I remember years ago having a pile of papers sitting next to me on the sofa constantly. I had EAP like 1640, two of them, writing in the morning and writing at night. And I was grading over 100 papers. I would go through and circle all the grammatical errors that I could find. And then by the end of the night, I was getting tired. And I'd be like, okay, I circled about 10 of them. That was probably all the student would really look at, and that's what I can get to. AI has the ability where you can put the student's paragraph in and say, correct the grammar or give me other suggestions. And it gives you quality and quantity. So it is thorough. It's great for some of those tedious tasks that maybe as teachers and instructors, we kind of feel overwhelmed with sometimes. Also, lexical and syntactic complexity. Thorough response and suggestions. You can ask it, what do you feel that this paper is worth and why. And as a teacher that's graded enough papers, I can kind of tell what an A paper is, what a B paper is, and what a C paper is. And so I've tested AI, and it's pretty spot on as far as saying, well, this looks like a B paper, and this is why. And so I will take sections of the reasons why AI has said so. And I'm like, you know what? That is a good reason. That's exactly correct. And it has saved me time. And it's so thorough. It's paragraphs. Now, whether the student reads these paragraphs of feedback is another story, but at least it's there, and it's much more than I would have been able to respond to, especially for my online students, where I don't see maybe face to face some of these students. So humans can also tell the difference for the robotic essay. So we're again talking about that. And lastly, timely and effective. It reduces the teacher workload. It gives us more time and energy for improving the quality of teaching. It gives us that space to be able to do the things that we really want to do, maybe create curriculum or, meet one-on-one with the student, as opposed to doing some of the more tedious tasks. So I do want to talk about how we can, as instructors, distinguish AI. And it's one of those things where we're like, I know it's AI that wrote it, and I don't know how I know. And these are some of them. This is some of these examples. So this is laid out in front of you. So the first one is tone. Humans are consistent, and kind of like going back to how maybe I speak, someone on text will know, my friends know who I am. So there was a one point where I got hacked, and they had asked one of my friends through email, somebody had asked them for money. And they're like, Robyn, we knew it didn't sound like you. So there is a tone that I think that we use and that we can use. And now I'm using individuals as an example, my personal experience from tone, but you can also do academic, you can do personal or professional. And so humans are consistent in their tone where AI is not. Emotions and opinions, we have tons of them, right? And so robots don't have them. They don't have emotions and they don't have an opinion. So this is one trick or tip that you could use within your curriculum to make sure that you are able to then assure that it's a quality from the student. Repetitive. So that whole cut and paste thing. Knowing that repetitiveness, then that's when they're regenerating things and they're not coming up with their own ideas. And of course, the originality, the AI patterns, supporting detail is where we can deter students from AI plagiarism, if you will. And this is one other thing I feel like, as it's the responsibility of us as educators. The challenges of these algorithms, AI has taken, the last 20 something years of everything that's online, and it's all kind of this all knowing information, but it's also the past. And so we have to keep in mind that our literacies have changed. Our value systems, maybe our political systems, our religious systems, our racial systems, all of these things have changed over time. AI doesn't know that. There is biases that have been through decades and through online information that could possibly pop up in AI generated information. So that's something that you want to keep in mind. Ideologies as well. And then just language practice. So looking at teachers and students, There are two parts to this, I feel like, for AI. There's technical education, and then there's moral education. And so technical education, students need to learn how to do more than just cut and paste for AI. But who's going to show them that? It's you. So teachers need to model that. They should also play. You need to play. They need to play. They need to play with AI. You need to play with AI to form that critical digital literacy skill. And then there's moral education. You need to make sure that the students feel empowered. You should feel empowered. So if you feel empowered, you're going to encourage your students to feel empowered. And that students are in control of the tool, that they're not all unethical, that they're not being purposeful, deceitful, and that teachers need to influence how they work and how they're being used. And I think that this right here is where there's been some sort of division between teachers and students, where it's like, well, we're going to sneak around and use it because you're not going to let us use it. And now it's like, well, then I don't even want it in my classroom. And now there's like this struggle instead of really having it embraced and really being the guide of showing them in that leadership, that non-authoritative leadership style of like saying, okay, you're going to use AI. Here's how you're going to use it so that it's you're using it as a tool and you're still the brain behind it. You're still the one that's going to control what it is that you want to see in the end. So meeting the students where they are, really, it's trusting the students. It's including AI in the process instead of trying to catch them and trying to say, oh, you used AI. It's almost like beating them to the punch. If any of you are all mothers, I'm a mother of a boy and a girl, both are the same, but I try to head it off at the pass. And so it's the same idea. It's coming up with creative solutions and creative ways to integrate this into your classroom so that you're then in the one that's leading this and that students feel like they're the ones in control, but also setting really good boundaries. So to keep teaching, doing pedagogy, not necessarily policing, maybe going back to that setting boundaries part, and again, making them feel empowered so they're not feeling like they're being sneaky. And also engaging the students. So AI is a great tool to engage technical, cultural, and ethical complexities. Any and all of these are great ways for them to engage with AI. So there is a quote by Sternberg and Kaplan, and it's for students to be fully literate in today's world, they must become proficient in the new literacy practices of information and communication. And I think that, when the Apple computer came out in the 80s, it was like, oh, Oregon Trail is gone, the floppy disk is gone, and here's Apple, it's the cool new thing. And then for some reason, we got into the apps and that was super cool. That was a fun, like, remember iPhone 4 or whatever. And then after that, nobody really cared about it. And so I just think that this is the next kind of big, scary thing, that it's just new, but it's still a tool, just like our Apple phones are just a tool. And we've taught our children it's just a tool. I'll give you a really quick example about this. My son, when he was 17, he's 21 now. When he was like 16, maybe, he got a bad grade and I tried to take away his phone. And when I went to go take away his phone, he informed me, I cannot take away his phone. It's not a privilege. It was a right, because he had his alarm clock on there in his calculator. So the way that generation then just looks at technology goes to show that it just continues to evolve. And so I think as educators and as teachers, it's our job to show the leadership in that we are the ones to show critical thinking in this new digital literacy. So I want to kind of, we have about 15, 20 minutes. I wanted to kind of open up the floor for teachers to ask, for any of you that wanted to ask questions, but these are some, like some platform springboard questions about, where do traditional practices join new practices for you? Where does your traditional curriculum join some new things that have worked for you with AI? Or have you used AI in your classroom? Has it been successful? What are some of your hiccups? What are some of your successes? How does the online environment affect writing achievement? Meaning safe use could enhance the literacy. Are there strategies or activities that maximize technology's usefulness as an educational tool? I was using Chat GPT originally. Claude has been kind of my go-to lately. Claude has a much better, unless you're paying for Chat GPT, I feel like Chat GPT has gotten a little glitchy and a little bumpy now. They only allow you like 5 entries. Claude has been very clean in the writing aspect. So that's the one I've been using. I'd love to hear from you all, what you're using and what works for you. Should there be policies for AI usage in the classroom? Helena, I would love to hear from you. I know you've written something recently, if you would want to share that. And then ultimately, like, how have you been successful using AI? I think that it's great for us all to share our ideas of the positive aspects of AI and how it has been successful in our classrooms. So I want to kind of open up the floor for anybody that wants to share, encouraging you to talk about or ask me questions about AI.
Hey, Robyn, can you share what you use for grading? Reviewing papers for you?
Well, all I've done is I actually put in, and I don't have it pulled up. I would copy their actual paragraphs and then put them into Claude and ask for feedback. I would say, how do you feel that this could be improved? Or I've actually put entire essays in. I have 5-paragraph essays. I would copy the entire 5-paragraph essay and say, please give me a grade and feedback on what you think on this. And I'm doing the same thing. And now this is something that we need to be careful of too. Exactly what I preached, you need to be careful of not doing. So when I copy and pasted the whole paper and said, please give me feedback, I didn't just copy and paste and put that into a student's feedback and say, okay, that's a B, and I don't even know what it said. I just stuck it in there because I have 30 other papers to grade. What I did though was I looked at the feedback, I picked and chose what I liked, and then I cut and pasted and then added some of my own to it. I do think I have a bonus here. Some assignment ideas for the brainstorming. I like to have them come up with, I put a discussion board, like if we have a discussion board on our platform, I have them brainstorm, maybe I have them writing blogs. And so it'll be like, okay, we'll brainstorm some ideas, this paper topic or on a certain blog topic or whatever it might be, and have them regenerate multiple times and tell me what it is that they like best and why. I think that gives them a lot more. Listen, even that why do dogs make the best pets? I put this into Claude and it gave me like 20 reasons. I could only come up with like 3 or 4. I love my dog, but like it came up with a bunch of reasons, like companionship, not just companionship. It was like, I don't know. It gave more reasons than I could ever imagine. So the brainstorming factor on AI alone is great. Do you
Sorry to interrupt, Robin. There's a question in the chat if you have a department-wide policy or a class policy.
Anne and Helena, do you guys want to speak to that?
Okay.
Hi, my full sale people.
I'm just waiting for Helena to go first and then I'll follow up. Okay. We don't have a department-wide policy yet, but recently I just wrote a policy for my writing class. It's level 3 writing. And our director kind of, shared it with the rest just to, for them to see and get an idea from there or use as an example. The policy is from my course, specific to my writing course, and I state that students are allowed to use AI within the context provided by the teacher. So, for example, if there is an activity where they have to do brainstorming, they can use AI to do the brainstorming, but then after that, they're just going to look at the ideas AI gives, and then they have to come up with their own brainstorming, with their own ideas. So the policy says that anything, AI used for anything else within that scope would be considered an academic integrity violation. And there will be penalty for that.
And to add to what Helen has said, because I've seen her policy and I've tweaked it for the course I was teaching. So Helena came up with a writing, what do I call it? Oh, AI policy for a high intermediate to low advanced writing class, because Full Sail as an institution does not have a university-wide policy at this point. So the English department, or the English courses, the English 101 courses, there are specific like guidelines for specific activities for in the curriculum, but it's not like it's a department-wide policy. Would you agree with me, Robyn, by what I just said? Yeah, pretty much. Okay, and so Helena came up with a course policy for the high intermediate low advanced writing class of our program. And yes, the director shared it with everyone. So right now it's at just a course level policy. We
and I
don't
think
have a
that
program-wide policy.
Yeah, and for us, I think that because we come from such a big technology school and a creative school at that, where and copyright is such like a major factor for us, where with audio and film and production and all that good stuff. So AI is a major concern for us, and really within, I think, being ambiguous, it gives, just because there is so much that is unknown still of how policies are going to be laid out university level. We've been a little ambiguous and in our own department and course policies as well. I just, I always feel like I don't police my students. I have a pretty good, I'd like to think that at least that I have a pretty good repertoire with my students. And I'm like, look, and like the whole idea with being a mom, I'm like, I can tell. I've been doing this long enough, I can tell. So you're only cheating yourself. I have that kind of morality, ethical, academic integrity talk with them. And we just work with it. But they love the power of being able to use it. And then the idea of having it within constraints almost doesn't seem so upsetting to them. I think it would be much worse if I said, no, you could not use it at all.
Right.
And then it's more like, oh, let's see what we can get away with. Because I think that's what happened to us in the very beginning when this first all came out. It was like, no, you guys can't use AI. And then we were noticing that I was like, wow, our students really have a great language skills these days. And it was like, oh, we need to like kind of adjust this and make sure like, let's let's model some of this behavior of what they should be using and how they should be using it.
Right. So just adding to Full Sail's lack of AI policy, yeah, I think not just our institution, but everybody else will have to tweak their academic honesty policy because, as Robyn have mentioned, you know, you can't beat it. So you need to just face the fact that it's here and it's here to stay, right? So you might as well set a policy and just, like Robyn said, come up with guidelines for using AI. I think Helena and Robyn will agree with me when I say that at Full Sail in our writing courses, we still require originality, right? So a combination of AI and your original thoughts, like where's your voice? They still need to show that their voice is there in their writing submissions. Because after all, AI doesn't know them, doesn't know their experiences. And I think one of the slides Robyn showed us was about the experiences and opinions, and AI lacks that. It's a machine, so it doesn't have that.
Any other questions? Anybody else want to make a comment?
Yes, sorry, I didn't mean to like talk too much here, Robyn. But the thing about language programs, and I think this is not just Full Sail, is that what is the procedure for exiting language programs? We still use standardized tests, and then and the students cannot use AI when they do that, unless they can use their own laptops or their own iPads, right? So for example, at Full Sail, we may allow them to use AI and we may give them guidelines for that, but in the end, they have to take a standardized writing test.
And that is something I think ultimately, and we know this too, validity is a big thing, is a big factor, right? It's not just motivation, it's not just engagement, but it's validity. So it's like, okay, at the end, it's still going to be you and a computer with no help. And so it doesn't behoove you to be cheating on anything. I think that even with vocabulary building, and I had it on one of those other slides with additional information, vocabulary building with AI, I love having them take some of their paragraphs, putting them in and like finding synonyms. And then we take those as a class and we talk about it and discuss it. Or it's like, oh, well, this word, and like it really gives a great springboard for conversation on synonyms or on grammar points or on run-on sentences versus like lengthy. Or so this vocabulary building that AI does, they can make, you can talk to it and make it simple. They can make it more academic or more elevated. And so they can really see how the paragraph can change, but it can still hold the same meaning. I think that's fascinating, even as a native English speaker. I think that like looking at it and saying, oh yeah, look how they changed the different adjectives, or, you know, look at these nouns and how they've used synonyms to change the meaning here. So, yeah, but then going back and saying, but remember, you don't, you know, this isn't your vocabulary. So when you go to take the exit exam, you still need to be able to know how to write. You still need to know how to do the organization. You still need to know how to do these things. And once you know how to do them and do them well, then you can manipulate it. And so that's where they feel empowered. That's that part where they start to feel like they're in control and that it's not AI just doing the work for them.
Do you encourage your students to use programs like Grammarly?
I I know that this was controversial within our department for a little while. I never had a problem with them using Grammarly because I was like, look, originally it was their writing and then they had to put it in and then they still had to edit their work and still had to figure it out. Look, I use spell check all the time in my texting, in my, in my texting, in my emails. And so I don't feel like, I think at the lower levels, I would say no. I think it's important for them to understand, subject, verb, direct object. You need to know the spelling of these. You need to learn basics. But I think at some of the higher levels, I don't see a problem with that because they can recognize like, oh yeah, okay, I missed a plural or I didn't have an article here where I needed an article.
I allow Grammarly for the homework assignments. However, in my class, I don't allow it when it's time for assessments. So, but I'm very upfront with my students and I tell them you can use whatever tools that you would like. This is what I tell them verbatim. You can use whatever tools you would like, but keep in mind that these are just tools, right? And at the end, we have tests, we have quizzes, and tools are not allowed for the assessments. So they know, the limitations of the tools. And I always stress how AI can help them, but they also need to decide how much they're going to be dependent on it, because when it's testing time, they can't use tools.
Well, if you have any other questions, this is my email. You can reach me at rsocha@fullsail.com. And I know Carla's been wonderful recording this, and this will be on the SST Sol website. Is that correct, Carla?
Yes, it'll be on the website under professional learning, and we also have a YouTube channel. So all of our webinars are archived there.